Welcome to the Arvosis Report. I am John Arvosis. Hey, everybody. How you doing this evening? I am well here in Washington, adjusting my microphone. Let me turn TikTok on here and get that rolling while we're waiting. If folks want to introduce yourselves, as always, that's a nice thing to do. Let me mirror my image. There we go. Turn the poll on. Hey, TikTokers. Let me quick poll. That's not the quick poll. Maybe, I don't know. Let's see. Hey, TikTokers, let me know if the poll is actually on. I had a poll that I did. Oh, here it is. Start. There we go. There's the poll. All right. All right. I've got a poll going on TikTok just to see. Actually, curious what you guys think too. Hey, everybody, on YouTube and the rest, I've got a poll going on whether you think Ukraine can win the war. This is a big topic of discussion today because the U.S. is causing more mayhem on this front. And I'm sincerely curious. And I mean, don't say yes just because we're all here big, Ukraine fans. But I'm really kind of curious what folks think if Ukraine can win this. And let me be even more specific because I'm a lawyer, so I always analyze things too much. I don't mean, I don't want you to say no because we're not giving them enough weapons, right? It's not that. I want to say, could Ukraine win this war? In other words, if we gave them what they needed, could they win it? Or no, there's just no way they could win this. That's my question. So, I've got an actual poll set up on TikTok. I'm going to have that going for about half an hour, so feel free to do that. Let me just introduce real quick here, since we're already rolling on TikTok and elsewhere. I am John Arvosis. This is the Arvosis Report. This is my nightly show, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where I update you on the latest news from the war in Ukraine for the last 24 hours. I try to pick the stories that I think matter and then explain to you why they matter. I'll do that for about the first half of the show. Thank you for the hat there. I do that for about the first half of the show, and then the Thank You, Inspired Woman. The second half will be question and answer. The way it works on TikTok, feel free to submit your questions during the Q&A box. In my profile, you'll see Q&A link. Use that. YouTube, use the comment box. Most important thing you guys can do to help me out, because I am independent media, is follow and subscribe on whatever service you are on. Thank you, Meg Wood. And your gifts are very welcome, and they help provide my income because nobody's paying me to do this other than you guys. So thank you so much for supporting me. That's the super chat and everything else on TikTok and elsewhere. Thank you for the hats. Perfect example on TikTok, the hat that somebody just put on my head. Those hats are actually very useful because they put money in the pocket of your creators. So thank you for that. Let me get rolling. So Kherson. So yesterday I reported on the town of Kherson in northern in northern southern Ukraine. There is a province. I'm going to show you my map. As always, so much of this is so much easier with a map. So southern Ukraine, okay? The province of Kherson. It is currently occupied by the Russians. The capital of the province of Kherson, Kherson, is also Kherson, same name. It is located here just north of the Dnipro River. The Dnipro River, you're going to hear a lot about this. You're going to hear a lot about Kherson in the coming weeks. The Dnipro River cuts through Ukraine, pretty much cuts the country in half, okay? All the way through. Russia currently controls Crimea that they invaded in 2014, and all of this land, more or less everything where my finger is here, okay? Once you get over here, all of a sudden, you get north of this river, and there's an extra bunch of Russian troops. Somewhere, I don't know, 20,000, give or take, although General Milley, I believe, the top American general, said today 30,000 troops, but you're talking 20 to 30,000 troops here north of the river. And this is important because if you were hearing in the last day or so about a possible Russian retreat in Ukraine, you were hearing about the town of Kherson, this town here and the region here. What is going on, and I've got a lot of notes here to tell you about, but basically the Russians announced that they were retreating, that they were pulling back and going to go south of the river instead of just north, okay? Now, Whether the Russians are telling the truth is a really good question. The Ukrainians don't necessarily believe them, or I should say, to use the old Ronald Reagan adage, trust but verify. They're moving ahead slowly, but they're not taking the Russians at their word because they worry that it's a trap. They are also hearing from local citizens in the town of Kherson that, in fact, the local Ukrainians are, in fact, still seeing Russian troops in the town of Kherson. Okay. So see, now this is Zen Song is already asking, and good question, because, sorry, my eyes keep itching, because the town and the province, man, sorry, my eyes keep itching. Because the town and the province have the same name, it gets really confusing to try to follow the news on this, okay? We kept hearing about a Russian retreat from Kherson. What they're talking about is the town of Kherson and the region right around the town. They are not talking about the province overall. What the Russians are doing is, at the very least, okay, let's put aside for a moment whether they are or are not actually retreating from the town. What the Russians are doing is digging in along the southern point of the river here. So the southern part of the river here, the Russians have dug in. They're putting lots of defenses, and any further south of there is all Russian troops. So you've got like 50,000 Russian troops here alone where my finger is circling, right? And then you got the 20,000 north of the river. So in order to basically save those 20,000 north of the river that are about to get circled by the Russians, allegedly, circled by the Ukrainians, allegedly the Russians are withdrawing and heading south across the river. Now, a couple points. As I said, first of all, the Ukrainians are suspicious. They're not going to treat this as legitimate smartly. They're going to move ahead slowly and treat it as though the Russians are remaining. Second of all, interestingly though, Institute for the Study of War, which is a very good defense think tank, I cite them a lot, and you will find a lot of the defense experts internationally talking about Institute for the Study of War. They're here in Washington, D.C., very credible. What ISW is saying is the retreat looks real. The Russians are doing things that are basically incompatible with staying where they're staying. In other words, they're saying that it certainly looks like the Russians are retreating. But again, that doesn't mean the Russians aren't leaving some troops there in order to surprise the Ukrainians, ambush them, whatever. Now, there's another concern. The concern is when the Russians withdraw, and Zelensky brought this concern up again today, are the Russians preparing to blow up the Kakhovka Dam? The Kakhovka Dam is a dam across the Dnipro River. It's more or less at the tip of my nail here, more or less, okay? So you're talking upriver from the town of Kherson, right? And upriver from all of this area. Well, the concern is, if the Russians were going to blow up this dam, they would flood this entire area. Well, why would they do that? They would do it in order to stop the Ukrainians from coming down from the north and following them. The second thing they would do is they would do it in order to basically flood out the Ukrainian troops themselves. If the Ukraine, it's not just to stop them with a waterway a la Moses, it is also just like the movie 10 Commandments, if you ever watched it, it's to stop the Egyptians and it's also to drown the Egyptians. So the idea would be to drown the Ukrainian troops as well. So the Ukrainians are very worried about what Russia has planned with this alleged withdrawal. The Ukrainians have, however, taken a number of towns, which is good news. Towns in that northern, again, in this northern area here north of the river. They've been, which is good. Which is great. So that's their, I will put it this way, okay? What we seem to know is clearly the Russians have been withdrawing. Clearly the Ukrainians are liberating more towns in the area. That is all good news. The remaining question is, to what degree are the Russians leaving troops in the city of Kherson and tricking the Ukrainians by basically trying to sucker punch them into coming in, and then they get surrounded. But the Ukrainians know that, so they're being careful. Now, let me just remind you a little bit on why, on why the town of Kherson matters. This region, a couple different things. The town of Kherson is the only regional capital that Russia has conquered, okay? They've invaded a lot of Ukraine in general, but the only regional capital they conquered with this invasion this time was the town of Kherson. So it matters in that regard because it's sort of the crown jewel of the invasion, right? They don't want to lose it. It looks like they're about to lose it. Second of all, Kherson, the region overall, and this area, particularly in the north, is super important if the Russians want to move ahead and invade the rest of Ukraine, which we know they want to do. Now, currently, does Russia have the capacity, either manpower or weapons, to move in from here and invade the rest of Ukraine? No, nobody thinks that. Does Putin want to? Yes. Would Putin prefer? If Putin couldn't go any further with this war, would Putin be happy holding on to the land he's got and then rebuild his military for the next invasion in 5 years? Of course. And it would make it much easier for Putin to invade the rest of Ukraine, including the town of Odessa, which he very much wants, if he were on the north side of this river. Because on the south side of the river means the Ukrainians are able to build defenses on the north and stop them. Another reason that Kherson is super important. If the Russians are knocked out of this northern area, north of the river, that puts the Ukrainians in artillery range of basically three, I don't have them on this map, but three important roadways that feed Crimea down here. So Crimea potentially gets cut off. It certainly gets cut off from the other provinces that Russia has stolen. And we know, because remember the Kerch Bridge was attacked here last month. The Russians have not been able to get many supplies across the bridge because the Ukrainians or somebody blew it up a month ago. So if the Ukrainians, bottom line, Ukrainians get this land, they're within artillery range of hitting a lot of the roadways here that are super important for stopping the Russians from getting their supplies. And finally, if Russia were to lose Kherson overall, the entire province, which nobody thinks is happening right now, but the entire province, you've now cut off Crimea from the rest of the territories here that Russia's occupying. You then would have Ukrainian troops all the way down here and Ukrainian weapons. What does that mean? That means Ukrainian artillery and the HIMARS in particular could hit Crimea, and they could even hit the Kerch Bridge directly. So anyway, bottom line is really important, this battle that's going on for Kherson right now. You will hear more about it. I just wanted to remind you again. Now, a quick little point, General Milley, who is the, thank you, Louis, General Milley, who is the America's top general. Basically, he's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the top uniformed military position at the Pentagon. The head of the Pentagon, the head of our Department of Defense, is a civilian, always. Now, today, Lloyd Austin happens to be a former general, but he is currently a civilian. The top military person at the Pentagon is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's General Milley, okay? Now, Milley gave an interview today or was talking, and among other things he says 100,000 Russian troops have been killed or injured in Ukraine. He says, in addition, the same number he believes goes for Ukraine itself. This is kind of interesting because it is a very high number in terms of the Russians. You might remember yesterday we were talking about this, and I told you how it's been really like a month or so that we've heard anything about thank you, Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is sending a whale. Thank you. We'll do the wave for the whale. Thank you very much. That was very, very generous of you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. But we were talking yesterday, and I was saying how a month ago or so, maybe even 6 weeks, I had heard that the Russians maybe had between 60 and 90,000 casualties. But when in the military, when you say casualty, you don't mean deaths. You mean deaths and injuries combined. Okay. So what is interesting, thank you, Dark Phoenix. You're on a roll today. I appreciate it. So what Milley is saying is the total number of combined dead and wounded for the Russians is 100,000, and it's the same number for the Ukrainians. That's a lot of men. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of men. Compare this to Afghanistan, okay? In the 1980s, the Russians invaded Afghanistan. The Soviets at this point, it was the Soviet Union. Thank you, Jen. The Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. And it is a 10-year war. The Russians, the Soviets do very poorly in the war. America ends up supplying the Mujahideen, and the Russians end up losing 10 years in, they've got to leave Afghanistan. I think it was 1989 that they left Afghanistan. So what is it, 8-9 years? In that war, this was an embarrassing war for the Russians, okay? The Russians lost so many troops that it caused a massive, peace movement, a mom's movement of the soldiers in Russia. It helped, many people believe it helped bring down the government. I mean, this was a big deal. Guess how many troops, thank you, Blue Piggy, guess how many troops died, Russian troops, Soviet troops died in the 1980s in Afghanistan in over a 10-year period. And this was considered a horrific number. 14,500 dead. 14,500. Thank you, Dark Phoenix. The Russians, this time around, the estimates were around 30,000 or more Russian dead in Ukraine in just 8 months. 30,000 Russian dead in 8 months versus 14,500 Russian dead over 10 years. And that 10-year total was considered horrific inside Russia. So let's see what happens. I am certainly going to be the last person to predict a revolution inside Russia because, they're a dictatorship, but they're not just a dictatorship. Russia's a country that, I've read up a lot on Russia and studied it. I don't want to call myself a Russia expert because there's people who spend their whole lives doing that. Thank you, Mr. Merrick. But I will say, Russia tolerates a lot of autocracy. They tolerate a lot of dictatorship. And, when the Russian people decide to rise up, I'll be the first person to welcome them, but I'm not expecting it anytime soon. Let me do a quick reset. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report you are watching. It is my daily show, Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, where we go over the latest news from Ukraine of the previous 24 hours. And then I do a question and answer. Thank you, Cat Dog, for the hat. And then we do a question and answer. So Milley also, this is the America's top general, in his interview today, and this is another, sorry, my allergies always kick in mid-show, and I've got one of my allergy pills. Yay! I'm going to take an allergy pill as I'm talking to you guys. Hang on. I forgot about that. I leave them here just in case. Excuse me. Much better. So General Milley, who's giving the interview today, the American general, among other things he says is, listen to this, and this really ticks me off. And I'm going to, again, talk maybe 5-10 minutes about this because I think it's a really important topic. He says, there has to be mutual recognition between Russia and Ukraine that a military win is not achievable. So he says, and he's talking about a negotiation and a peaceful settlement. He says, in order for a negotiation to happen and in order for the war to end, both sides need to understand, both sides need to recognize that neither side can win this war. Now, let me give you a little more background and then we're going to talk. Per NBC News, big American news network. Thank you, FYOC. A slowdown in fighting this winter in Ukraine could be an opportunity for negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, according to U.S. and Western officials. Now, we heard about this in the last day or so, that American officials seem to have been pushing for negotiations, right? And President Biden got asked about it today. I think I was just watching it today at a press conference, today or yesterday. It was yesterday's press conference. Biden gets asked about it and says, you just talked about, Ukraine, compromising and negotiating. Are you suggesting Ukraine should compromise and give up land? And Biden goes, oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I don't like what I'm seeing here. I have anybody who's followed this show, okay, from the beginning. I have said from the beginning that I think President Biden has done an excellent job marshaling the international coalition to defend Ukraine. The Russians did not expect that the international coalition would come together like this. And I don't just credit Biden. I mean, I credit NATO. I credit the Japanese. I credit all the countries who came together to support this effort. Okay. So let's start with that. Europe gets major credit. Everyone gets credit. I worry because from the beginning I said, and I am convinced of this more every day, that Biden does not want Ukraine to win this war. Biden is afraid that if Ukraine wins, Putin is going to freak out and go nuclear. Now, he has said repeatedly, Russia cannot be allowed to win this war. He then says, this literally quotes, Ukraine cannot be permitted to lose this war. He's never said Ukraine should win. And now, by the way, I've been saying this for a while now. You guys have been pretty good about it. But when I go on Twitter and I make this point that Biden does not want Ukraine to win, everybody freaks out at me on the left and says, well, you're a Biden hater, this kind of garbage, right? We now have General Milley, the top general in the Pentagon, saying that there is no way Ukraine can win this war. If there's no way Ukraine can win this war, then the U.S. is not in this war for Ukraine to win. What I'm worried about is I think Ukraine can win this war. I think Ukraine is not going to win it because we will not give Ukraine the weapons Ukraine needs to win it, because we are just, genetically afraid of Vladimir Putin. And I will say this, and I think it's partially because I'm of a certain age. And I think those of you who are younger, you didn't get to, thank you, Jackie, you didn't get to experience this as much, but I was around during the Cold War. I was around for several decades of the Cold War. I was in graduate school in the 1980s. The Russians had nukes. The Soviets had nukes for a very long time. The Soviets, I believe, tested their first nuclear weapon in 1949. Okay. For 40 years, for 40 years, the world had to deal with the Soviet Union having nuclear weapons. Thank you, Hunter and Malto. And we had to deal with the fact that the Soviets were mean SOBs. I mean, you think things are dangerous now? You should have been around during the Cuban Missile Crisis. You should have been around, thank you, Hunter, and Freshwater for that. Oh, no, not Freshwater, Hunter. Who else was that? Sorry, I'm looking for the gifts. I don't want to miss the gifters here. Bonnie. Oh, that was Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie and Cat Dog. The Soviets in the 1980s, the early 1980s, we had horrific relations. America and the Soviet Union, horrific relationship in the early 1980s. When Ronald Reagan was president, I do not fault Reagan for this. Ronald Reagan was very harsh on the Soviets and the Soviet leadership. You had Brezhnev, you had Andropov, you had, Chernenko? I think, were those the three? Because there were three in a row because two of them died right at the beginning there. This was my point I'm trying to make with all of this, with everything that was going on with the Russians in that era, is things were bad before with the Soviets. The Soviets had nuclear weapons for 40 years. We did not play this game where we said, oh, we better not make the Soviets mad because maybe they're going to nuke us. I mean, of course, we didn't want the Soviets to nuke us, but we recognize the fact that we have nuclear weapons and they have nuclear weapons. And that's why neither side is going to use nuclear weapons, because the other side has them as well. And I think the same thing is true of Ukraine. You've got to be careful about this, obviously, but the Russians know we've got them. We know the Russians have them. And the only way, and I will maybe stop with this and make sure there's nothing in my notes that I'm missing here on this, but the only way Russia will use nuclear weapons in Ukraine is if we don't send a strong enough message that we will destroy Russia if they use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. That doesn't mean we're going to nuke them, because we won't nuke them. We're not going to nuke Russia. It'll cause a nuclear war. We all lose. We are not going to, we're not going to drop a nuke on Ukraine, right? Because I'm going to guess if Russia nukes Ukraine, it's not like we're going to nuke Ukraine to nuke Russia, right? Ukraine would not be very happy with that if we destroyed the Ukrainian territory with nukes. So we're not going to use nukes against Russia. But there's a lot we can do. And I think if we make clear to Russia the catastrophic consequences that will happen, and allegedly we have, I don't think Russia's going to use nukes. Here's the final little point on this. Even if you think that, oh God, we can't afford to have Putin lose this war because he might go nuclear. This war is not going to end. If Russia and Ukraine agree to anything short of Ukraine totally capitulating, and I mean Ukraine literally hands over the keys to the entire country. If Zelensky hands over the keys to the entire country, maybe there will be a lasting peace. Now, the lasting peace will be because literally Russia will have eaten all of Ukraine and destroyed the entire country. If any bit of free Ukraine remains, Russia will invade again in 5 or 10 years when they build their military back up. It's a guarantee. All the experts think so. And this is what worries me about this whole discussion about we've got to give Putin an out, and we can't give Ukraine the weapons it needs to win the war because Putin will get angry. We have got to figure out not just how this war ends, but how this war doesn't start again. Thank you, Annie. I will say this sort of to go on not a tangent, but something I was going to bring up. I think, for example, however this war ends, I think that NATO is going to have to get involved. I don't think NATO has the balls to allow Ukraine to become a member. That's not going to happen. But I think you will need NATO peacekeepers in Ukraine after the war is over. And they will serve as a kind of tripwire where basically the troops are on the ground. We did this during the Cold War with the Soviets. The American troops were in Europe, not in Eastern Europe. They were in Europe to help defend the Europeans, but also to make clear that if the Soviet Union invaded Europe, there were American troops that would die, and America would therefore be at war against the Soviet Union. I think we would have to have NATO troops in Ukraine to guarantee any peace, because otherwise there is no guarantee, right? What are we going to say? Next time it happens, maybe we'll give you weapons again. Maybe. Come on. All right, let me look and see if there was anything else on that topic. One last little thing. Wall Street Journal today, because I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal says that the Biden administration has just refused to provide Ukraine with advanced drones, lest Putin see it as an escalation because the drones can reach Russia. That's what I'm talking about. We are letting Vladimir Putin make our decisions for us, and I think that's a crock. Russia's state TV broadcaster. Oh, this was very funny. Actually, I'll do a quick reset since I've been talking for a while here. I am John Aravosis. You're watching the Aravosis Report. This is my daily show where I review the latest news from Ukraine, and then we do a question and answer period afterwards. Check out my Discord. I've got a Discord, by the way. It's for folks to check out at some future time. It's discord.aravosis.com. And it's a nice community. We talk about all sorts of foreign policy stuff, domestic policy, recipes, our pets, you name it, sports. And I've got an auction that's been going on there for a while. Currently, I am auctioning off a Zelensky shirt. I found the maker of the green combat shirts that Zelensky wears, and I am auctioning them off. Of course, I'm not auctioning off the literal shirt he wore because that would be gross, but we found the exact shirt and the exact maker, bought several of them, and we're auctioning them off. So you can find them there. That's discord.aravosis.com. Russia state broadcaster. This was an amazing video today. You know those shows at night in Russia where there's the broadcasters that get really angry at America and England, and they're always talking about nuking us. Remember how those Russian TV shows, you probably have seen a clip at some point with the Russian TV show. Oh, thank you, James. Oh, that's you again, James. You're always so generous, James. I appreciate that. James just did a whale. Thank you for the whale, James. Thank you for that. I remember that you've been especially generous with that. Thank you. So anyway, these are the broadcasts in the Russian evening news where they often talk about declaring nuclear war on us. Well, one of the broadcasters goes on tonight, and he's talking about our top story, which is the Russia claiming it is withdrawing its troops from Kherson. It is in the town of Kherson. It is retreating. I'll just show you again on the map. Retreating from the town and this whole northern part north of the river here, that they're withdrawing to the south. Big debate as to whether they are, but seems like they are in part. So the Russian announcer hosting the show is talking about it, and he says something kind of amazing. He says, and I mean, it was an amazing clip. He says, I am not going to take a position, the Russian says, on our withdrawal from Kherson, because if I say that I am in favor, I would be agreeing that we should abandon Russian territory. Because remember, this is all the land that Russia claimed they made part of Russia 4 weeks ago. Remember, Putin did his big celebration when he stole all the Ukrainian land. So he says, if I say I agree with the withdrawal, thank you, Nat, then I am agreeing that we should abandon Russian land, and I will be accused of, and he brought up some law that he would be accused of. He says, B, If I say that I disagree with the decision to withdraw, then I am disagreeing with the military and I am causing dishonor to the military. And he shows the law on the page, on the screen, that this would be covering. Basically, he says, I'm not going to take a position and I'm going to turn to our commentators, and the rest of the commentators start laughing. This guy, what he did, he was admitting that there's no free speech in Russia. You could call it a joke if you want, except that it's not a joke. He even showed the law on the screen that was being covered. It was just a very strange broadcast to see on Russian television, because again, this is a dictatorship. These guys, nothing really gets out there that isn't scripted. It was very strange. Anyway, just wanted to throw it out there. Amnesty International. So Amnesty may have done something good today. Amnesty got into trouble, you guys might recall, several months ago. The Ukrainians cannot stand them now. Thank you, MK, for the bike there. I'm saying MK. The Amnesty International gets into trouble several months ago because they criticized Ukraine for putting civilians in danger. And they claim, I'm getting my lip stuff here. They claim that the Ukrainians are putting civilians in danger by fighting in cities and putting troops inside things like schools and stuff. Now, thank you, Bonnie Aflac. The Ukrainians responded by going, the Russians are occupying 20% of our country. Oh, the poll just came up. Let's take a quick look here. Wow, that's a lot. 87% say Ukraine can win the war. Wow. That's interesting. I mean, I know we tend to be a pro-Ukraine group, but that doesn't necessarily mean you think they can win the war, even if you're even if you want them to win the war. That's really interesting. 87%. Wow. That's kind of amazing. Wow. It's like a bunch of Ukrainians watching today. That is pretty cool. Excellent, guys. So Amnesty gets into trouble for saying that Ukraine is putting civilians at risk by fighting in cities and this kind of stuff. Ukraine responds, thank you, Midge and Gary. Ukraine responds by going, Russia is occupying 20% of our territory, including a lot of our cities. We have to fight in cities to get our cities back. And when we're in the cities, where do you think we're going to spend the night? Because there is no military base in a Russian-occupied city that we can go spend time in. We've got to sleep in a local school or whatever else it is. It was, anyway, kind of amazing. Well, Amnesty today accused Russia of committing crimes against humanity in Ukraine. According to Amnesty, Russia's actions of forced displacement and deportation are reprehensible and constitute a war crime. Forced displacement and deportation, we are talking about Russia is... you already heard about this. They have been forcing Ukrainians out of the Ukrainian regions. Thank you, AC Autor. I'm gonna make it Spanish. Thank you for that. We got another whale. We do the wave. Thank you. This is another whale day on TikTok. You guys are amazing. Thank you. The war crime. So what they're saying is that the Russians have been kicking citizens. For example, they're doing it right now in Kherson. The town and this area north of the river, the Russians are literally kicking the Ukrainians out and making them flee. They're making them go south into Russian-occupied territory. They're not letting them stay in their homes when the Ukrainians free. That is displacement. The other thing they're doing is they are the deportation. The other thing they're doing is they're forcing them to go to Russia. We know this in terms of the children who have been stolen by the Russians. We know in Mariupol, for example, the city in the southeast that has been under Russian occupation now for several months. The Russians just destroyed that place. Mariupol is the city where the Azov battalion was fighting in the steel factory for 2 months. Remember the valiant effort? It's also the city where the Russians bombed that theater, drama theater that the children were in, that wrote the word children outside on top of it, and the Russians bombed it anyway. That's Mariupol. Mariupol has been just a disaster what the Russians have done to that place. Well, we know that what the Russians were doing, they were forcing the citizens who wanted to leave. Thank you, Flower Lady. The citizens who wanted to leave, they forced them to go to Russia. They wouldn't let them go to the rest of Ukraine. They forced them into Russia, and God knows what's going to happen to them now that they're in Russia. Anyway, that's what Amnesty is saying is a crime against humanity. Let me just do a couple little quick things because I don't want to eat up too much. The U.S. announced a new security package, $400 million, which includes a lot of air defense equipment. From the military experts I follow, they say that this is actually a big deal. And they say that because of the Ukrainian drones, those Ukrainian, because of the Iranian drone. I read somebody say, are you Ukrainian? Are you Ukraine? And I'm saying Ukrainian. Because of the Iranian drones that have been causing all the trouble, NATO is now stepping up, NATO partners, US included, and providing better air defenses to Ukraine. What else? Other quick stuff. The Poles are handing over 1,570 Starlink systems to Ukraine. I'd still be curious who's going to pay for them, because there's the box. I guess you've got to purchase, but then you've got to pay for the subscription. Still, good thing. And CNN says Germany has pledged to send additional military equipment to Ukraine, including 3 crucial Iris-T SLM air defense systems and missiles. The UK, Britain, has frozen $20 billion worth of Russian assets, which is really good news. And finally, I'm just doing a quick summary here because this way we can sort of move on. Putin is not attending the G20 meeting. This is interesting. Putin was going to attend. The G20 is big economic meeting of many of the top, thank you, was that Victoria? Victor, thank you, Victor, of big meeting of the world's top economies, okay? 20 of the top economies. Russia was attending. Russia, Putin and Zelensky were both invited. Zelensky said, if Putin goes, I'm not going. Putin, we heard, was going to go. Now he's not going. Now, they say that Putin isn't going because things are going so bad in Ukraine. You know, maybe. Things have been going bad for months. I wonder whether something else didn't happen. I wonder, for example, typically at the G20, you've got a group photo where everybody gets together, especially, I mean, the Asian, well, all the different Asian stuff. They all get together and they have a photo of all the leaders standing together. There is no way that most Western leaders are going to stand on that stage with Vladimir Putin. There is no chance in hell. The other problem, are they going to sit at a table with Vladimir Putin? I would not be surprised if Americans didn't basically telegraph privately that there was some problem in America and some of the other leaders that said, if he comes, we're going to have major. I mean, I know we said this, but whether that wasn't what finally got Putin not to come, I don't know. Somebody says the Poseidon test failed. Is that true? I'd be curious if it did. This is a Russian nuclear torpedo that the Russians are testing. I'd be very curious if it did fail. That would be pretty cool news if somebody wants to Google. But it's a really kind of freaky new torpedo that the Russians have created. That's a nuclear torpedo, and it works like a drone in the water. But this thing can go, am I right? Is it like thousands of miles or something? I mean, it's a crazy distance it can go. And it is basically, I mean, think of it as a shark in essence, but it's a nuclear shark. And it can have a nuclear bomb on it, and it can just travel and travel and travel. It can't be seen. And then it can make its way into a port and blow up the entire port with a nuclear weapon. Scary stuff. The Russians were doing a test of it today, maybe not of the nuke, but of the missile, and it failed. Woo! The torpedo is nuclear powered and can go almost forever. There you go. I was going to say, I remember it can go thousands of miles because it's nuclear powered. Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious that it didn't work. Oh, well, sorry, Russia. All right, guys, I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. You're watching my daily show. Monday to Friday, we talk about the war in Ukraine. Now I'm going to switch over to the question and answer period. Please do keep the gifts coming on TikTok. You are helping support my work, and I very much appreciate it. Questions on Super Chat, etc. Excuse me. And while I'm talking, if you guys want, you can check out aravosis.com, my last name.com, and you'll find my Discord. It's my Linktree links, basically. So you can find my Discord. You can find my Patreon if you want to help me out that way. You can find my store. We've got a lot of things, including this t-shirt designed by a young Ukrainian kid. 50% of the proceeds from most of what I'm selling in the store we're channeling back into aid in Ukraine. The other 50% supports my work because I'm doing this full time and nobody is paying. I shouldn't say nobody's paying. You guys are paying. Nobody's paying me other than you guys who have been wonderful with the gifts and the support. But go to erevosis.com and you can find my store and everything else. All right, let's jump in with questions. So I will pull my phone up to be able to check the TikTok questions. Go to my Q&A function in my profile on TikTok. Thank you, Gary. What else you can do is, I always say this for the subscribers, feel free to send a question on the subscribers just in the page right here, because I can press a little button and it'll only show me the subscribers. So, what do the Russians think about the war? I don't know, Jonathan. I mean, it depends what you mean. There are opinion polls in Russia. I think the problem is nobody really knows if the opinion polls are valid because Russia's a dictatorship. I mean, let's face it. I don't answer polls here in America. When someone calls and they're a pollster, first, I don't answer the phone if I don't recognize it. But I also get kind of creeped out if it's a pollster, because I'm always like, who are you? And I'm totally safe here. If I were in Russia and some pollster calls and is like, comrade, we'd like to know, do you support Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine? What are you going to say? You're going to be like, yeah, hell yeah, right? So I worry about those polls. I mean, from what we do see with the polls, it looks like the polls are getting worse for the government. People are getting more concerned about the war, okay? Because basically, when the war started off in Ukraine, it was kind of easy for the Russians. I mean, there were a lot of Russian troops, maybe 200,000, 190,000 that were sent. But for most Russians, they didn't have a dog in the fight. They didn't know anybody who was going. Well, then a lot of those people die. Like we said, 100,000 now, dead or injured. Those people come back home. Their relatives find out. Their friends find out. They find out about the neighbors down the block, right? You know, Mrs. Pushkin down the block, her son died. Her son lost his leg. Her husband lost his arm. I mean, this stuff, and you've got 750,000 Russian men who fled the country to get away from the war. Everybody's going to know somebody who fled the country, right? That's a hell of a lot of, this is a country of 150 million people. 750,000 is a hell of a lot. So in any case, yeah, I don't know. So I'm saying, I just don't know. My concern with the Russians is, even if they don't like what they're seeing, the Russians tolerate bad government way more than a lot of the rest of us do. You know, I mean, they tolerate dictatorships. They tolerate authoritarians. Thank you, Bonnie. So, you know, who knows if they'd actually ever stand up and do something, you know. Having said that, the women did, the mothers did. The mothers stood up during Afghanistan, you know. Sorry, looking here. Let me see here. Looking here. Questions. All right, I'm going to pull up on TikTok Q&A. I always laugh when people send me messages on Facebook Messenger. I never use Facebook Messenger. Who uses Facebook Messenger? I mean, my friends do, but it always kind of cracks me up. Elise, how are you, my dear? If you had to guess, what do you think Biden's desired end state is for this? They sound like they're more into weakening Russia than helping Ukraine win. I think it's more complicated than that. Let me first say, okay, Biden wants a compromise. He wants Ukraine and Russia to get together and both agree to something that will help cement a long-term peace. The problem is, I don't think there is anything. I didn't really get into this, but the Ukrainians, no Ukrainian leader can agree to give up land at this point, right? I mean, the Ukrainian people would kill him if he said, well, let's negotiate and just give the Russians Crimea and all this land that they stole in the south. Or let's give them Crimea, and instead of all 4 provinces they stole, let's give them 2 of the provinces they stole. I mean, who's going to do that, right? Think of your own country. You know, we'd be like, well, let's just give Russia Alaska because it'll make relations better. Who's going to, not just who's going to do it, what politician could get away with that, right? So I don't see that happening. Biden certainly believes, sorry, my hair tonight. Biden certainly believes that Putin, if he doesn't win, is going to freak out and possibly use nukes and everything else. So, I mean, Biden, what Biden is hoping is that both sides get tired of fighting, and both sides have so many losses. Not that he's hoping for both sides to have the losses, but that both sides have so many losses and get so tired and get so just, the public gets tired that they're willing to negotiate. But again, I don't know what can be negotiated at this point. They sound like they're more into weakening Russia than helping Ukraine. I don't think that's true. I think it's both, and I think both are legitimate. A country has to pay attention to its own national interest. And what I mean is the countries that help Ukraine have to pay attention to their own national interest. Typically speaking, nobody is going to help Ukraine to the tune with which we, but I say we collectively, not just America, because even though the US is putting up more money than everybody else, European countries like, is it Estonia, I want to say, and Poland, I think, are the two that have put up the most in terms of their GDP, in terms of the size of their economy, I believe. They've put up the most. So you've got a lot of countries that are putting up a lot of money. You can't expect a country to do that unless they see it in their own national interest. So I think a lot, and by the way, therefore, they're being Machiavellian. They're being strategic is what I mean. They're not just doing it because they're out of the goodness of their heart. This is something that drives me a little crazy. And it's a critique that traditionally we would see from folks on the left, but they would say, but not just folks on the left. They would say, America is only doing that because you're worried about their oil or something like this. And I always respond and go, yeah. I mean, yeah, typically countries don't do things just because they're nice guys. And frankly, our people would be pissed off if we were spending this much money simply because we're nice guys. And I will fault Biden for this, though. I think Biden has to do a much better explanation of why it is in America's national interest to support Ukraine, because I believe it is. It is in America's national interest to weaken Russia. It is in America's interest to stop Russia now before Russia starts to go after Poland and the Baltic states, right? I mean, it is lots of, and it is in America's national interest, and I think the world's interest, that we send the message that nuclear countries can't get away with this. Because what happened here, Ukraine got rid of its nuclear weapons. Ukraine had nuclear weapons because it was part of the Soviet Union. Soviet Union dissolves in 1991. Ukraine agrees a couple years later to get rid of its nukes in exchange for security promises. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Some guarantee of security we gave Ukraine. I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry, I'm on like a roll with this. In any case. So yeah, my point was just that I have no problem with the goal being to weaken Russia and to help Ukraine. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they're both good goals. And third goal, to help my own country and to help each of your own countries. I think it makes all of us more safe by challenging the Russians and helping the Ukrainians. And at the same time, I also care about the Ukrainians. I don't like the genocide, and I want to help. I feel bad for the Ukrainians, and I want to help them. And I at least consider that at least a factor in why I think it is good to support the good guy if you can, and if supporting him will make a difference. But I do think that's a fair point. In any case, predictions of what will happen in the winter. A lot of people think this winter things are going to kind of freeze literally and figuratively, meaning the war is going to kind of grind to a halt over the winter. Now, will that happen? I don't know. I mean, the Ukrainians have surprised us a lot, so I don't know whether that's the case. NATO did not cause this. NATO did not break an agreement. Mikhail Gorbachev, the former Soviet leader himself, came out and said there was never a promise from NATO not to expand closer to Russia. And I think it's important to remind Russia and its allies that the reason NATO keeps getting bigger is because countries that Russia kidnapped and abused for decades, actually for half a century, the countries that Russia brutalized. Russia went into World War II, okay? Sorry, what are you doing, dog? What the dog wants to go out? Russia goes into World War II. Russia signs a secret pact with the Nazis. And what Russia says, Soviet Union says, Stalin, we're going to divvy up Europe. you go and invade Western Europe. We'll take Poland, we'll take Eastern Europe and have kind of a field day here, right? Oh, sorry, I did see that. Jamie, yep, I'll get to your question next. Sorry about that. We're going to split up Europe. This gives Hitler not just permission to invade Western Europe, but it also gives Hitler an advantage because now he goes, hey, I'm covered on my eastern flank because Soviet Union's got me covered. This war thing, this could work, right? So this is what the Russians did. So what do the Russians do? They help Putin. Hitler turns his back on the Russians, stabs them in the back. So Russia declares war on Hitler. Well, what happens next? We go on, the war ends, everything's happy. What does Russia do? Russia invades and steals half of Europe and imprisons half of freaking Europe. Everywhere from Germany, cutting Germany in half and going east, almost all of it, other than like Greece was free on the bottom. Albania kind of depends. Well, Albania was a disaster, but a little bit different. Yugoslavia. Russia takes most of these countries and imprisons them in communist dictatorships, the worst dictatorships you can imagine. Okay. God, what was I always do this. Oh, with the guy that was saying that about Russia and NATO. The reason NATO keeps growing is because every brutalized spouse of Russia, every country that the Russians kidnapped for half a century, escaped from Russia and said, oh my God, please protect me from the crazy people in the East. That's why NATO grew. And that's what happened. So, I mean, I get annoyed when people say that kind of stuff. Well, NATO grew and it scared Russia. NATO grew because literally the hostages were released and they ran for their lives. That's why NATO grew. And what Russia is doing in Ukraine shows exactly why all those countries close to Russia and all the former Soviet countries should be terrified of Russia. Because what they did to Ukraine, they could do to you next. And they would do to you next. Sorry, Jamie. I appreciate the question. I even saved your question, Jamie, and then kept talking. Any case, let's look at the future. Ooh, you're doing a Daniel question, like a college essay question. Let's look at the future. Ukraine fends off Russia and they have a country in tatters and a generation of work to rebuild. Yep. How do they protect from future invasion? Bingo. Is having nuclear weapons restored an option? No, only because, I mean, a couple different things. If Ukraine, first of all, I think signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty or whatever, so they'd be violating the treaty, all of that. They're not going to get money from the West if they try to develop nuclear weapons, right? The West is going to cut them off. They can't afford that. They've got to be, and in the long term, Ukraine wants to be thinking about joining the European Union, all that kind of stuff. That would antagonize a lot of people. So also, I just don't know how it would even work. I don't think they'd be able to do it technically and financially. But you raise a good point, and I'd mentioned this earlier in the show. Even for people like Biden, I think, who thinks that, neither Ukraine nor Russia could win this, and we've got to be really careful. We've got to make sure Russia gets something out of. Biden has not said this, but I think Biden thinks this. We've got to make sure Russia gets something out of this, because if they don't, then they're going to have nuclear war. Well, any agreement with Ukraine that Russia reaches, any agreement at all, other than Vladimir Zelensky saying, you know what? We had a good run as a free country. We're closing up shop. Putin, why don't you take over all of Ukraine, call us the Russian Republic of Ukraine, and our country doesn't exist anymore. Patty. Thank you for the whale, Patty. With the wave for the whale. Thank you. Again, very generous, Patty. I appreciate that. I did the wave. Sorry. This is my problem. Also, I've been tired because I'm still tired after the election. Every time I do that, the future invasion, right? Unless Zelensky gives up the entire country, Putin's going to invade again. The Russians will invade again in 5 or 10 years. They still want all of Ukraine. They want Odessa. They want to keep Crimea. They want a land corridor from Russia to Crimea. So they're going to want all of this. They want Odessa over here. They wanted Kyiv, the capital. Russia does not consider Ukraine to be a country. It thinks Ukraine is basically a fake country. And they want to annex the entire country and make it part of Russia. The only way to stop that from happening, I think, is putting NATO troops on the ground. And after the war is over, there's NATO peacekeepers there, and the Russians know that if they invade, if they bomb, they're going to risk bombing NATO troops, and if they bomb NATO troops, then they're at war with NATO. Now, I'm with you about joining NATO. I don't think NATO's got the balls for it. Julian says they should join NATO. I agree, but I don't think NATO's got the backbone for it. I don't think so. They're not going to do it. I mean, look what's happening now, right? Oh, if we have them, come on, Biden and the rest of them. Thank you, Dee. Biden and the rest of them are going to say, if Ukraine joins NATO, Vladimir Putin's going to see it as escalation and he's going to get really angry and he might use nuclear weapons. It's the same crazy logic we're going through now about everyone is so afraid of Vladimir Putin. You know, I can say as a Ukrainian who is in Kyiv, nuclear will only if we will fight for Crimea. Well, the only thing is, I don't believe that Putin will use nuclear weapons if you fight for Crimea. I don't believe it. The war is over for Vladimir Putin if he uses nuclear weapons. The entire world will turn against him. NATO will get involved, and it's going to be a disaster. Putin can't win a conventional war with NATO because Putin can't win a conventional war with Ukraine, right? He's not winning. I mean, at best, it's a tie, and I don't even think it's a tie. Ukraine is slowly doing better and better. Putin is not winning. If NATO enters the war, Putin loses. If Putin goes nuclear, and NATO goes nuclear, well, then it's the end of the world. And not only do I know that and you know that, but Putin knows that. That's the thing. The Russians aren't stupid. They know that nuclear war isn't going to work. Like no one wins a nuclear war. We know it and they know it. What annoys me is we're acting like we're the only ones who know it. Like, oh, he's got nukes. We should be really scared. Well, we've got nukes and he should be really scared too. And I think he gets it. But I think every time we make a statement, thank you, Dee, every time we make a statement about how afraid we are of Vladimir Putin, I think we just empower him. Thanks again, Dee. I think we just empower the man. It annoys me. This is a topic that gets on my nerves. We've got a few more questions, guys, a few more minutes. Just to remind you, I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report, my daily show where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. And then we do Q&A, and we're doing the Q&A right now. Thank you, Dai. I appreciate that. Gifts for a few more minutes, I appreciate too, because every time you guys do those gifts, it helps me out by paying the bills. So thank you. Let me look here. Okay, Roshin, I think that was the super chat that I missed that I got. Yes, I got Jamie's future. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any others. I don't think so. If not NATO troops, David is saying, could there be Polish troops or Romanian troops as peacekeepers? Sure. Or if NATO, Ukraine could be EU and they have a military alliance as well. Yeah, I mean, the European Union military alliance is still kind of nascent. It's still kind of early, I believe. Thank you, Marcy. That one always cracks me up. And an Bear, I'm going to call you Bear. Thank you for that. Just trying to see what else here. Beep, 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 beep. Rachel is saying Putin won't use nukes as hell lose China's backing. Oh, I'm sorry, as he'll lose China's backing and then North Korea, as North Korea is loyal to China. Well, that's a good point. I mean, the Chinese did come out recently and say that that they urged Putin not to use nukes. He does run that risk. And I'm sorry, but the whole thing, again, we've let Putin, thank you for Tay, we've let Putin play this game too on Crimea. What the Ukrainian person was saying. Crimea, part of Ukraine. Russia invades and steals it in 2014. Russia now says, that's Russia. We own it now. And if you invade and take that back, we're going to go nuclear. Well, screw them. I mean, seriously. So this is, I guarantee you, Biden is not going to be happy if Ukraine tries to take Crimea back. I guarantee you, because he's going to be afraid it's going to piss off Putin and God knows what happens. Again, We need to be loud, early, and often and tell the Russians every time they say that, we've got to say, no, it's not yours. It's Ukraine's. Ukraine has every right to get it back. And don't you dare talk about nuclear weapons unless you want the wrath of God to come down on your heads. And you say that, and you say it every time, and it makes Putin in the back of his head go, oh God, right? I mean, I think of, again, I bring up Ronald Reagan in this instance. Forget about Ronald Reagan, whatever you think of him on domestic policy, whatever. But Reagan, in terms of dealing with this and dealing with Putin's threats, Reagan would have Putin quaking in his freaking boots. I mean, he would, because Putin would know for a fact that Ronald Reagan would bomb his behind if Putin used nukes. I mean, he knows. I mean, any of you who are too young may not know this, but anybody my age and up, imagine what Reagan would do. And it's not just what Reagan would do. It's the Russians need to understand clearly what we would do, and it's got to scare them. Because if it doesn't scare them, they might do it. All right, guys, it's 7 o'clock. Sorry, I look at one last question here from PB&J. We could have a little Twitter discussion. Folks if people want to hang out, we can talk for a few minutes about all the chaos at Twitter, which I've been following really closely. And there's actually been a lot of news in the last couple hours. It's kind of crazy with Musk and Twitter. If you want, it's not Ukraine, but it's kind of a fun topic. And it's not a partisan topic, which I think is kind of nice too, because I like that our Ukraine discussions are also, generally speaking, not partisan. Let me look at PB&J's, and I'll do the quick recap. Do you think Ukraine will increase, modernize, and build their military for future protection, seeing how they can't depend on NATO? Absolutely, positively. It's what they did after Russia invaded in 2014 and stole Crimea. The Ukrainians built their military. They relied on NATO in the West, and we helped them build a world-class military. Now, I always point out the point that a military friend of mine said to me. He said, but when we make that observation that we help the Ukrainian military, that does not mean we get credit, because he said, you know who else's military we helped? Afghanistan and Iraq. We spent only 8 years helping the Ukrainians. We spent 20 years helping the Iraqis and the Afghanis, and their militaries suck. Afghans' military especially. Afghanistan's sucks. I don't mean any insult to them, but their military sucks. Your military is only as good as the people who are fighting. The Ukrainians are amazing fighters. They have an amazing military. So we were able, it's, in essence, I would almost put it like, we were very good teachers, but we had very good students. And unless you're a good student, doesn't matter how good your teacher is, right? You're not going to get an A unless you're a really good student. Ukraine gets an A. So to milk that analogy. All right, let me do a quick recap of the news. I'll just, I like to go through at the end and just read the top stories that we talked about today in case you came late. And then, as I said, we can hang 15 minutes or something or whatever and talk about Twitter, about all the crazy, like I said, a lot of crazy stuff in just the last 2 or 3 hours. I mean, I like Twitter, but Jesus Christ. All right, real quick, Kherson. So it looks like the Russians may be, in part, retreating from the city of Kherson in the northern province of Kherson. It looks like they're retreating to go south of the river, but it's not 100% clear, and the Ukrainians are being very careful because they don't want to be caught in a trap, okay? General, let me see this. General Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the top American general, says 100,000 Russian troops have now been killed or injured in Ukraine, and an equal number of Ukrainians as well. Milley says there has to be mutual recognition by Russia and Ukraine that neither side can win a military victory. We then had a long discussion about, I think it's bad for the U.S. to make comments like that because I think Ukraine can win if we give them the support they need. Russian state broadcaster kind of made me laugh by being brave in basically telegraphing to his audience that there is no freedom of speech in Russia. Amnesty International accused Russia of committing crimes against humanity. The U.S. announced a new $400 million security aid package to Ukraine. Poland is handing over 1,570 Starlink systems, Starlink terminals to Ukraine. CNN says that Germany on Thursday pledged to send additional military support in the guise of new air defense systems or additional air defense systems. The UK, United Kingdom, is frozen $20.5 billion worth of Russian assets, and Vladimir Putin is not attending the G20. Okay, I'm going to actually pull up my Twitter account because I tweeted a lot of this. So, I mean, I don't need to, we're going to talk about Twitter for a few minutes. Feel free to hang out. Okay, I've been on Twitter since 2008. I am a Twitter fan. I have been agnostic on Elon Musk. Okay. I have been very impressed with Tesla. I test drove a Tesla a number of years ago, and it was it was like driving an iPad. That's the only, it was lit, or driving an iPhone. That's what it felt like. It was the coolest freaking thing. Okay. SpaceX. Cool. I mean, as I always say, SpaceX, coolest thing ever. So that's all I knew about Elon. Then I followed him publicly on Twitter, and a little more craziness coming out. Elon buys Twitter like a couple weeks ago. All hell breaks loose. I've been on Twitter all this time. I've got a verified account, so I know kind of how that all works. Elon, then there's been a whole explosion of everything in the last day. So people started buying fake accounts on Twitter as of yesterday. As of yesterday, Twitter began its new program of letting the masses, I forget they're calling this. They're like, let the peasants now be just like the elites and have verified accounts. And to have a verified account, you get a little blue check mark next to your name, just like they do on Instagram. And hold on, I'll show you. I mean, you guys, I'm assuming you all know this, but I will show you. Like, this is my Twitter account, okay? So you can see the little check mark, just like you'll see on Instagram or Facebook. And to get the check mark, you had to meet a number of standards of showing newspaper articles. And, in other words, you were covered in the press, the work you were doing. And if you met the, important enough person, basically, and the idea was, by the way, important enough person that it's important that people know you are who you say you are. I've been doing a ton of work on everything else. I would argue now the same thing applies for the Ukraine work I'm doing, because I raise money. We've raised, actually, I've got to check the latest. I think it's like $77,000 in humanitarian aid that we've raised from all of you guys. Literally, you guys here, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, $77,000. If somebody were to fake that, they would raise money and lie and try to scam you guys. Well, at least, right? You go to my profile, you see it's me, it's me. Twitter decides as of yesterday, you can get one of those blue checks just by paying $8 a month. There is no verification. They don't have to prove you are who you say you are. You don't have to have an ID. You simply have to have a credit card. A lot of people were saying, everybody was saying, this is crazy. You're going to have a bunch of people who are going to come on the system. They're going to get these check marks and they're going to scam people, because on the rest of the internet, people think the blue check mark means you're verified. A, you're important or something, whatever. B, you're verified. You had to prove you are who you say you are. Well, what happens? LeBron James, first one I think I saw was LeBron James. Somebody comes up, let's see if I can find them here for you guys. LeBron James, some baseball manager. Today's were very funny. Hang on, I'm going to pull this up as I'm talking to you. The ones today that come up, they're probably still on my computer. I'll bet I copied it on my computer. Too bad. Yeah, I copied them on my computer. Today we get, today we get Apple TV Plus. It's fake. Look at this. You'd look at this account and just looking at it, you'd think it was real, right? You'd look and you'd go, oh yeah, that's the real account. It's got the plus next to it. Apple TV Plus. It's a fake. There was LeBron James yesterday, and LeBron came out and said, big basketball star, I guess I'm not really up on this, comes out and says, I've decided I'm transferring. I'm moving to another team. That was up for a couple hours. Somebody goes and imitates Donald Trump. The account goes live. 2 hours the account was live of this guy claiming to be Donald Trump. Imagine what that could have done. Here we've got, I can't even show you this one. There's one of President Biden, but it's talking about sex, so I can't show you. One of pundit Ben Shapiro. You get the idea here. What happened today then, and I don't know if I have it here. Here we go. This is yesterday. This is somebody pretending to be ESPN talking about some head coach who's transferring. Some ESPN reporter, Adam Schefter. That's not him. It's a fake account. But he puts out this story about some big sports story that, of course, is making people go, oh my God, right? Look at the number of people. 3,000 people shared the story, okay? This is LeBron. This was the LeBron one yesterday that came out. I'm going to show you guys. And again, LeBron James, even I who don't do sports, LeBron James, huge basketball star. I know that. Eli Lilly today. Lynn Dykstra was another one. Eli Lilly today. Somebody comes out and says Eli Lilly is going to be giving, the big pharmaceutical manufacturer is going to be giving free drugs. And I forget if it was their, I don't remember which drug it was. For 3 hours, a reporter calls Eli Lilly. For 3 hours, Eli Lilly is trying to get Twitter to pull the account. And for some reason, Twitter isn't pulling the account. So the fake Eli Lilly account is staying up there. Are they EpiPen? I mean, it's Jesus. Yeah, Jesus today got verified. It says, what was it? Like Carpenter something God. It was like, oh God. You know, it's funny, but it's not funny because of the damage you can do. Then, as Meg Wood is saying, then you get 3 high-profile, I don't know what they do. You get the idea. I'd be back. They get traded, I guess. He's making fun of my sports knowledge. Then today, 3 top people at Twitter leave. The head of cybersecurity quits this afternoon. The head of, it's something called like trust and safety is the guy, quits. This guy, Yoel or Yofa, whatever his name was, he was the guy that Musk was putting out there over the last week to prove that Twitter was going okay. This guy is the guy who came out a couple days ago and said, no, we don't have, that racism has not gone rampant on Twitter since Elon Musk got here. It's only 500 accounts and they're fake accounts and they've been spreading 99% of the racism, right? This guy has been Musk's guy, defending him every step of the way. This guy and this woman, both of whom who have now quit today, the guy and the woman who just quit held a conference call yesterday for Twitter advertisers to convince them that everything's really going okay at Twitter. You can trust this company. The next day, the 2 of them quit. Okay? Listen to this then. Musk then calls an emergency staff meeting today. And, a couple other things. National Public Radio. Okay? National Public Radio is public broadcasting in America. The only thing I can compare it to, even though it's different, might be the BBC. It's different though, but that's kind of the best thing I can think of, okay? National Public Radio today warned its staff to not tell people their Twitter handles. Stop advertising your Twitter handles during the show and when you're at public gatherings, because NPR is afraid that people are going to steal their staff's Twitter handles because of what Musk is letting them do, right? That they're going to create fake Twitter handles. So now Musk has this emergency meeting today. And hang on, I'm trying to like pull up the, I'm trying to pull up several of these things from the meeting. Twitter employees were told last night. Twitter employees were told last night that they had to be in the office a minimum of 40 hours per week starting this morning. Okay. Many do not live anywhere near a physical office thanks to the firm's previous work from anywhere policy. So Twitter was hiring people like a lot of companies all over the country and saying, you can work from anywhere. Musk last night tells them this morning, you better be in the office when they don't live near an office. There's more. Hold on. There is so much more here. He talked about bankruptcy, which was just freaky. Hang on. Come on. Oops. What happened here? Oh, my mentions. I'm looking at people responding to me. Even I don't know how to use Twitter. Hang on. Elon Musk just told Twitter, this was at the meeting this afternoon. Elon Musk tells Twitter employees he's not sure how much somebody define run rate in economics for a company. What is the run rate? I didn't Google it. The rest of the quote is what interested me. But for people here, somebody write it on one of these two and I'll quote it back to you. What's the run rate? Just so folks know, we're talking about Elon Musk now. We're done with Ukraine. We're talking about Twitter because there was so much. Stop talking to me, Google. The rate of cash flow. Okay. Elon Musk says he's not sure how much run rate the company has and, quote, bankruptcy is not out of the question. He says this afternoon. Hang on here. There were two more things here because he talked about. Oh yeah, this is the third woman, the head of human resources and talent management. Just quit this afternoon. She's the third big person, but mind you, the head of human resources and talent management gone. Musk mentioned that Twitter had. Yes, he was asked about the company's financial runway and how it was doing in terms of the business. This is this afternoon. Musk mentioned that Twitter had, quote, net negative cash flow of several $1 billion with a B, and that he recently sold a bunch. We knew about Tesla, but listen to the quote. He recently sold a bunch of Tesla stock in order to, quote, save the company. I mean, guys, this is, and again, and it has now been an hour and a half that I haven't been looking. Bloomberg, so Bloomberg's top story now is Musk warns Twitter bankruptcy possible as senior executives exit. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Oh God. Oh God. Okay, hold on a second. Oh my God. I'm going to take a picture of this because people are now having a field day with these fake accounts. Hold on. Oh my God. This may be like one of the best ever. Oh God. I mean, it's not funny, but it's funny. Look at this. Oh God. And you may not be able to tell that's the blue check mark, the verified mark next to it. This is what I'm talking about. Oh my God. That is freaking priceless. Oh my God. I'm just looking here to see what other news. I mean, it's sad because I don't like what Elon has done here. I think he's destroyed the company. He came in with an agenda. Elon, unfortunately, felt somebody hurt Elon when he was a child. I don't know who. He's got Asperger's. That's not the only thing going on here. Somebody hurt him. He has fallen in with the MAGA types recently. The thing is, he's fallen in with sort of MAGA, like Peter Thiel. Not fallen in. He's known Peter Thiel for 20 years since PayPal, right? But fallen in with the MAGA types. But at the same time, like one of his top advisors is David Sachs, who's this venture capital guy who really hates, the woke left, but at the same time is running a podcasting platform that has all of the craziest of the crazies on the woke left. Katie, Americans will know this, the rest of you won't. Katie Halper, Michael Tracy, that Aaron Mate loser, like all the crazies is who this guy has on his podcasting platform. So there is this weird confluence of extreme left and extreme right that Musk has tapped into, and they convinced him that, these elites on Twitter, they're awful. They're destroying the world. You need to go. Thank you, Phoenix. You need to go. You need to destroy them. And Musk came in and he decided he was going to destroy, the blue checks on Twitter. And of course, the Trump crowd loved it because the Trump crowd hates Twitter because Trump got banned. I mean, right? That's easy to explain right there. The thing that I don't get is he spent $44 billion of his own money. Like, we're talking billion with a B dollars. You don't do that and just come in to destroy it. So I don't think he came in to destroy it, but I think he came in to destroy me. He came in to destroy everybody he sees as being the elites. his people were tweeting yesterday, his defenders. Yesterday, I responded to this guy. He's talking about journalists. They're talking about journalists, and they're saying how, you journalists get stories wrong. Sasha, oh, sorry, my dog wants water. I'm going long. One moment. We're continuing, Elon. Once I get my dog water. One moment. All right. Want some more water? All right. You poor thing. Right, well, here, let's start with this. Let's start with that, okay? You can wait for the rest. So his friend is out there, Elon's VC friend, and saying, journalists, we're talking about, by the way, anybody on Twitter who's joining us, we are no longer doing Ukraine. We're done with the Ukraine update. We're talking about the fiasco going on at Twitter. I mean, things just imploded this afternoon. Disaster. Tons of the most senior staffers quitting. Musk said he may declare bankruptcy. I mean, disaster what is going on at Twitter right now. So people asked if at the end of the show we would talk about it. So we've been talking about it just in case you joined us and you're wondering why the hell a Ukraine update is talking about Twitter. That's why. Oh yeah, he said about journalists. Musk hates journalists and his right-wing VC guys. We're talking about, you journalists think you're the only people who can tell right from wrong. You get the news wrong just as much as everybody else. And I read that and I was like, journalists get the news wrong? Sasha, no more right now. Just wait. Journalists get the news wrong just as much as everybody else? And I responded and I was like, that's like saying brain surgeons get brain surgery wrong just as much as everybody else. Actually, journalists get the news right much more than, most of you out there who aren't journalists. Because you don't have the sources, you don't have the experience in terms of interviewing people and sussing out who's lying to you, which journalists do. And journalists have got, anyway, I don't want to go into a whole journalism thing here, but this is, Musk wants to destroy the blue checks on Twitter. The problem is they're the power users. There was a study that came out, or at least was being cited a couple weeks ago, that Twitter itself survives basically in terms of all the velocity, all the activity on it, is a core group of super users. And it was kind of funny because I'm a super user apparently. It was saying something like, you check in several times a week. And we were all like, oh my God, why don't you try several times a day, right? And you post things at least 3 times a week. It was very funny in any case. But the point is, a very small number of very active users create much of the content and much of the conversation on Twitter. And Musk is scaring them off. He's scared. Oh, the advertisers too. He's scared off the advertisers. As I told you, he had a meeting yesterday that was organized by 2 key top staffers to convince the advertisers that everything's really okay. Those 2 staffers who briefed the advertisers yesterday quit today, right? I believe the number I saw for what % of Twitter's revenue comes from advertisers, I believe the number was 96%. It was definitely in the upper 90s. I think it was 96 of their total revenue comes from advertising, and the advertisers just left. I mean, they left a week ago, but now with all of this news going on, they're going, and the advertisers themselves are now being attacked. Like I was saying, Eli Lilly, who had a fake account put up about them. And it took Musk, after 3 hours, he still hadn't taken it down. I don't know. It's really, the thing that makes me upset about this is that I love Twitter. Twitter is incredibly useful whenever there is a big world issue like Ukraine. I've got a Twitter list of, I don't even know if it's 140 experts around the world that I follow. I've made the list. I don't usually make my lists public because it's just kind of creeps me out. I was asked by a couple of you guys to make my list public, so it is. I think there's only 2 or 3 people that follow my list. It's for me. It's not for you anyway, so I don't care. But it's, if you're on Twitter, it's a list of like 140 really good people around the world on Ukraine, and I love it because I'll go through all the news first to prepare my nightly show to brief you guys on Ukraine. Then I go through my Twitter account because it's all of these, what do they call, like the OSINT people and, defense experts. I mean, it's not just journalists. It's people who know the former generals, and they're usually analyzing the data. And they're analyzing, like, for example, today, they were analyzing a lot of what was going on in Kherson, in the region, to figure out, are the Russians really leaving or not? I love that stuff because the kind of work I've always done in politics has been, I always say, reading tea leaves. It's, because in the old days, actually, my old Greek women would do it. I remember when I was growing up, the Greek ladies would do it with Greek coffee, which is Turkish coffee. And they would finish it, swirl it around, turn it upside down, and they would look and read your fortune by the way the coffee grounds looked on the bottom of a cup. And tea leaf reading is the same concept. And I love that. I always loved looking at details of things in politics, and Joe Biden, trying to figure out what his plan really is for Ukraine, whether he thinks Ukraine can win. I look at all the tea leaves and I'm able to reverse engineer what I think is Biden's brain or George Bush's brain or Donald Trump's. In any case, whatever. Anyway, I'm not sure where to go with this now, but my point was, for me, Twitter is incredibly important. I love Twitter. I love General Hertling is amazing. Exactly. Twitter has been great for me on Ukraine. When Canada was having the whole thing with the truckers, I created a Canadian list of journalists and stuff. That was fascinating to follow all the stuff they were talking about. I had a list I created on that Malaysian airliner. Was it MH17 or something? That Malaysian airliner that disappeared, that we were all following for weeks. I've created lists on all sorts of different topics. Cryptocurrency, because I'm interested in that too. It's been amazing. It's just been amazing. But it's just so sad to see an incredible reason. And the thing too, I would say, is I would have paid. I didn't want to pay $8. I would have paid $4 or $5 maybe a month to help keep Twitter alive. But then Musk came in and he was an absolute jerk about it. Musk came in and basically said, I hate you. And he wants to charge $8 a month, which is obscene. Who pays $8 a month for anything? Maybe you pay it for Netflix. Twitter ain't Netflix, anyway. No, it really bothers me because it's just, there is the thing is, again, if he weren't such a jerk about it, I would have been willing to pay something because I get value out of it. And frankly, if before Musk had Twitter come out and said, look, especially to you, I've been there since 2008. To those of you who have been here 14 years, if you feel you've gotten value out of it, we're going to start a new program, $4 a month, right? Maybe make it $4 a month, or maybe even give you a couple different categories, $4, $6, $8, whatever. And we're not going to threaten you. We're going to give you more benefits. Like, all of us have wanted this edit button, right? We're going to give you all these benefits if you give us $4 a month, because we want to thank you for supporting us, but also we need your help. Literally, it's like a Twitter telethon, right? We need your help. If you like what you've been getting out of our service, would you help us out? I would have helped him out. I would have. But Elon? I feel like somebody's been yelling at me for 2 weeks and now wants me to help. God, I did move over to Mastodon. Mastodon's been its own drama, I have to say, but it's been interesting. I keep getting yelled at by people on Mastodon who are telling me that politics is scary. I just can't even. Mastodon, we may not have a choice, but people are telling me that discussions of food have to be put behind little trigger warnings because food upsets some people. And I was like, food? Yeah. Politics. All politics should be behind a trigger warning because politics is scary. I was just like, okay, there is Mastodon. Oh, yes. Now, it depends which server you're on or whatever. I went on the big server everyone told me to go on, and it is the most PC group of woke lefties literally, everyone is walking on eggshells not to upset it. But when I say upset, literally, like I said, don't put a picture of food. It'll upset people. I'm like, food. Okay. Somebody told me we don't discuss, Elon Musk. We don't discuss Elon Musk and Twitter here. It upsets people. I was like, well, you've got several million of us who came over in the last week. You invited us. Of course, we're going to talk about Elon Musk and Twitter. It's kind of the reason we're here. I mean, no, I'm not making this up. Voting rights, voter suppression. Now they don't say don't talk. No, actually, Musk, they said don't talk about. They don't say don't. You should put it behind this little warning that lets people know it's potentially toxic. And so that nobody can see it, and you click the button and then it shows what I wrote, and that way it hides it from people. This is Mastodon. I was just like, are you voter suppression? Voting, because minorities find voter suppression a very upsetting issue. And if you talk about it, voter suppression, you're going to upset them and you should hide it. I kid you not. I kid you freaking not. And I've been politely getting into real big fights with some of these people because I'm like, you people are out of your mind. I mean, I'm not going to say you're out of your minds to them directly, but I'm like, you're out of your minds. And their response to all of this is always, well, you think you can come here and just be toxic and post images of dead people? I'm like, who's posting images of dead people? Finally, the best part was Kathy Griffin then jumped in and defended me. God bless Kathy Griffin. I mean, God bless Kathy. Kathy jumps in and defends me and goes, I got several of those myself. Oh my God. Anyway, no, I mean, I don't mean to bite the hand that feeds me, but so help me God. Mastodon is like, it is literally a boutique of 100,000 women's studies major with a Y. I don't mean to knock women's studies like that, but I mean the stereotype with the Y. It is just like, literally, we don't do anything that upsets people. And of course, their definition of upset people is anything, literally anything. Oh my God. Anyway. Okay. See, I don't even talk about the United Nations and I'm getting upset. Usually talking about the UN where I worked is the only thing that gets me upset. I would give Mastodon a try, but the server I'm on is a bunch of crazy people. And I mean, and the thing is, it's super passive. The thing is too, it's super passive aggressive. You know, hi, I know you're new here, but the way we do it is we don't post toxic things. Somebody literally goes to me, we don't post things just to provoke outrage and anger. I'm like, I don't post things to provoke outrage and anger either. like thank you very much. You know, no, but the Patreon's different though. The thing is, Twitter has been super unique in terms of creating a community, the way we can all talk together, also being able to reach out to people. I mean, a bunch of Karens, basically. It has been amazing on Twitter. When you have problems with a company, you reach out to them. Now, granted, I've got a big account. It helps. You reach out to that company on Twitter. Oh, boy, they pay attention. They pay attention. Very interesting. You can reach out to famous people. Even when I had a smaller account, you know, you could reach out to CNN journalists or whatever. And they would very likely respond to you. General Hertling. I reached out to this former top American general, and I would reach out to him occasionally and ask questions on Twitter, and he would write back on Twitter and say, oh yeah, what I mean there is, it's really nice. Kara Swisher the other day, I had listened to her podcast and heard something about Elon and was responding to somebody else about something. And I said, you know, Kara Swisher mentioned the other day, So, you know, taking what she said, I think maybe And she liked my tweet, basically probably meaning I agree. Yeah, I would agree with you, right? That was kind of cool because I don't interact with Kara Swisher. She's probably the top tech journalist in America, I would say. Kara is. Anyway, there you go. All right. Let's call this a night, guys. I'm not going to go to Discord tonight because now we've been talking for half an hour. I'm exhausted. But do check out the Discord. As I said, discord.airvosis.com. I did put up new things for auction now. We've got another Zelensky shirt. I've got the Zelensky green combat shirts that are very cool. So I've got those up for auction. Thank you, Dyke, for the lullaby. But yeah, I've got the Zelensky stuff up for auction. I've got actually a cool women's embroider shirt that's going to be, the auction's done tomorrow. Yeah, the Zelensky shirt's a couple more days. I put some patches as well, some Ukrainian military patches. Anyway, it's kind of cool. But check out the Discord. Check out my Patreon. Thank you for the hat there. Basic bottom line, I'll end with this. if you're kind of new to this, or even if you're old to this and have been following me for a while, I appreciate any of you who have been able to help out. If you want to help out and you're trying to think of how you can do it, I've got a Patreon. You can just, subscribe on the Patreon, $5 a month. And that helps me out a ton, because the more that grows, the more it becomes steady income, which is great. You can just go to my Discord. Discord's free anyway, but you can also pay via the Patreon to have a higher level. But the Discord's free. You can check it out. You can go to my store.aravosis.com. There's a lot of cool shirts and t-shirts there. All of this you can find. I set up my link tree as my last name, aravosis.com. So just go to aravosis.com. You can find it all there. All right, guys, I'm going to call it quits. That was kind of a fun off-ramp talking about Elon and Twitter. I'm going to go and log into my Twitter account and see what's up with Elon. But thank you, moderators, for everything you've been doing. Thank you guys for all the gifts, especially the whales, but all of your gifts are very much appreciated. And the super chats and what is it? God, Thursday already. Oh my God. Jeez. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time US, and we will talk about Ukraine again. And we'll probably talk about Twitter again, because I think it's going to be an ongoing. I mean, I'm almost enjoying it, except that I like Twitter. So I don't want it to die, but he's made me so angry that I'm kind of enjoying this. It's scary. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you as always. This was fun tonight. Different, but fun. All right.